All right, let's get into Taurus, shall we? Share my screen. Okay, so the beginning of Taurus is an interesting part. The end of Taurus too is actually an interesting thing. So if we look at the last degree of Aries, hold on, let's see. So 41 Aritis, if we wanted to see where that is, so Aries, 41 Aritis. So that's actually 15 degrees. Okay. So 41 Aritis is at 15 degrees Aries. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 degrees outside of Aries until we get to Taurus. Let's see if there's any overlaps here. No. Okay. So with Aries energy, I mean. All right, so 0 degrees, I have Omicron Tauri. So let's find where that is. If that's here, awesome. All right, so it's kind of, again, it's up to you how you want to do this, right? Because like, for example, if the sun is right here, it's not technically in alignment with Aries or technically in alignment with Taurus. I guess though, if you do zoom out a little bit and go into the astronomical layouts of where these are, that can be of help sometimes. We don't always go off of that though. So again, it's kind of up to you. And or if you have a client that is like these later degrees Aries, say like 20, 21 degrees Aries, but they feel a lot more like a Taurus, then okay, you know what I mean? Like, great. Then they can be a Taurus, So it's kind of, again, it's up to everybody's own determination. But another thing I do want clients and people and like overall to consider is that let's say you are a cusp, right? Let's say your birthday is like really close to the day it crosses over to 0 degrees Taurus. Um, where was I going with that? Like, God, where was I going with that? Cool. Thanks, Brian. Oh, so this is kind of getting into like different kinds of readings you can do, but one type of chart reading is called a progressed chart. And in progressed charts, essentially every year that goes by is 1 degree that the sun would go by. So if I am 35 years old, then my progressed chart would, or my sun in my progressed chart would be wherever it was natally plus 35 degrees. So if I was born, what was it, like Leo at 4 degrees? So Leo plus 35, I'm sorry, 4 degrees plus 35, that would be outside of Leo, right? It would be about at the beginning of Virgo. So within my progressed energy, I would be a Virgo sun, not a Leo sun. So if somebody though, if they have a very late degree, let's say they were born like late degree Aries, by the time they're 2 or 3 years old, their sun would have already progressed into Taurus. So even though they were Aries sun when they were born, they might really really feel that Taurus energy because from their memory, if they're only remembering like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and beyond and not really the beginning years, then they're only going to really recall that Taurus energy. So you might get somebody that's like fighting you to the death, like, no, I feel like a Taurus. It's like, well, yeah, that makes sense because within your progressed energy, you technically did take on Taurus energy ever since you were, older than 3 or 4 years old. So that makes a lot of sense. If anybody ever tries to fight you on that, you can explain that to them. They might accept it or they might not. And that is what it is. If not, just be like, all right, great, you're a cusper. Like if you want to start Taurus degrees early, go for it. You know what I mean? Like it's completely up to you and your interpretation for these things. All right, let's get into the actual astronomy or the interpretations. All right, so Taurus is pretty big. Of the zodiac constellations, it's one of the larger ones. I want to say like third or fourth. Hold on, I lit incense and it's like too much incense. Smells great. But we'll light that after. All right, so the first screen that will pull up will always be the star alignments just in Taurus. So, for example, 0 degrees through 8 degrees, they all have a Taurus star alignment. One bonus thing about Taurus is the Pleiades. So there's a ton of stars in there. I did include Seleno and Stereope because they are part of the Seven Sisters, even though their magnitude is above a 5. Still included them because you kind of have to if you're talking about all of them. And then as we go through to the other, like Perseus, for example, like then we'll go through the individual ones, but yeah, there's a lot of stars in Taurus, a lot of very bright stars in Taurus. Let's just go back to Taurus a little bit here. So Taurus is the head of the bull here. We see Omicron Tauri, which kicks off Taurus energy, and then it goes all the way up here. Zeta Tauri and Elnath a little bit here as well. I do include this little area as a cusp. I used to include Orion in there. I do not any longer because I fucking hate Orion, which is like biased energy. But I think as we go through, you will also hate Orion. And if you don't, I don't really want to work with you, to be very real, but whatever. Okay, anyway, Taurus energy. Let's get into what Taurus means. All right, so the Taurus mythology is actually very complex. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. So let's start with the most common story. Let's see. Well, actually, so there's Zeus transforming into the bull, and then there's other mythologies surrounding Taurus as a feminine entity, and Zeus turning Io into a cow, and also the Egyptian goddess of Hathor. So we'll talk about that in a little bit here too. I also just learned, which I feel contractually obligated to mention, and I don't know if it has anything to do with this, but I learned that an elephant, a male elephant, is also called a bull. So I was like, huh, that's interesting. Doesn't really fit in with these mythologies or stories, but I did think that was interesting. All right, so Zeus and the abduction of Europa. So Zeus was the Greek leader of the gods. He saw a young girl, like not, I mean, I'm not gonna say Zeus is a pedo because or pedo, because I think that pedophilia is like attraction to prepubescent humans, whereas this girl, she was young, but could have children type thing. So creepy, yes. Pedophilic, not really, but gross nonetheless. All right, so this girl was named Europa. He saw her playing with her friends and was like, ooh, wow, look at her, she's so beautiful. So she was an extremely beautiful girl and the daughter of King Agenor, and a Phoenician king which is in modern day Lebanon. So Zeus, knowing that he couldn't approach Europa in his regular form because he was a god, if the gods just like show up to people, they end up killing people because their energy is crazy. So Zeus transformed himself into a white bull and he went down to talk to Europa as a bull. He convinced Europa to ride on his back, and when she did, he kidnapped her. He's like, oh, you want to ride on my back? We'll just go for a ride quick. And then he's like, no, actually, I'm going to kidnap you and take you to Crete, which is what he did. And then he transformed back into his regular form and raped her. Not exactly sure how he was able to do that without killing her, but whatever. So eventually, there's a lot of holes in mythology. You know what I mean? There's a lot of holes in these stories overall. Like, how did that happen? How did that come about? We're not sure. This is just the story. All right. So eventually, Europa produced 3 children with Zeus: Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Sarpedon, who eventually became judges of the underworld. Very interesting. Europa's father and brothers looked all around the world for her to help her and bring her back, but were unable to find her as Zeus kept her hidden. Europa is the mother of Europe and literally, quite literally, where we get the name Europe from. So very interesting that an entire continent is named after a young girl that Zeus decided to kidnap and like breed, essentially. That's, to put it in shitty terms, but that's Zeus, you know what I mean? That's a lot of what these gods were doing at the time. This is a theme with Zeus you'll find throughout mythology. I am not a huge fan. So Zeus, who was the king of the gods and also a notorious rapist and cheater, this is a new myth, once again found himself attracted to another woman who wasn't his wife. His wife was Hera. Anyway, Zeus saw Io, it looks like Lo, but it's I-O, Io, who was or might say it differently, but I say Io, who was a priestess of Hera, actually. So priestess of his wife, and wanted her for himself. Hera was like, you know, Zeus had done a lot up to this point of like cheating and lying and scheming and A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And Hera was like, you know what, dude, I'm on to you. Like, this is stupid. So she went, Hera went to go like catch Zeus basically, and Zeus, to protect Io, turned her into a cow because he was like, well, if she's a cow, Hera's not gonna know that, you know, I'm messing with her, because she's just gonna be like, oh, you're just out here with the cows, right? But Hera was like, I don't know, there's something, you're being a little sketchy about this particular cow, you know? So Hera was catching on to Zeus's fuck shit, and she ended up having the cow Io guarded by a 100-eyed watchman named Argus. Eventually, Io fled into the ocean away from Hera and ended up in Egypt. And somehow, I don't know how, but somehow she ended up having a son and a daughter from Zeus. So Zeus still caught up with her in Egypt and was like, you're still having these kids. But yeah, crazy. Going from a priestess of his wife to running from his wife, and ended up having a baby with Zeus in Egypt, or two babies. Crazy. Disrespectful. Like, Io's clearly the victim in this story, right? Like, she was just out here trying to do her thing, but nah. So other Taurus mythology, we can look at the Egyptian goddess Hathor. So associated with Venus and the sun, as we can see of like the sun disk on her head here. Also associated with sensuality, music, dance, maternity or fertility, royalty, nurturing, self or life sustaining, sexual expression, celebration, and parties, including wine and alcohol, later conflated with Isis. Isis ended up stealing her symbolism, essentially. But Hathor has the same soul as Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love and beauty, and Aphrodite is the same soul as Venus. And then Hathor's other depiction within ancient Egypt was Sekhmet, a lioness goddess, which we'll talk about when we talk about Leo Minor as well. So here's more of like, you know, Zeus is kind of like the shitty part of Taurus mythology, but then there's also Io and Hathor symbolism to look into for interpretation too, because I don't believe that Zeus gives, or like Zeus mythology gives the entire story here. Like, we definitely do see a lot of these Venusian themes with Taurus, and Taurus energy is ruled by Venus. So, all right. So Taurus mythology, we have the Zeus, the lower aspects of the Taurus archetype, uncontrolled sexual energy. So this is anybody with any Taurus placements. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to have a star alignment, to one of the major stars in Taurus. This is anywhere from 0 degrees all the way to the end of Taurus. I believe it's like 38 degrees. I'll have to double check. But so uncontrolled sexual energy, lying, cheating, selfishness, taking what they want, little regard for others, stuck in a loveless marriage for power purposes, as we see with Zeus and Hera. Io and Europa, like, this might be you being a rape or a sexual assault victim, or it could be like you doing that to another person too. Being a third party against their will, like being cheated on, or having, being involved with somebody that has a significant other that you didn't know about, something like that. Being wanted only for beauty but not respected, that can be really challenging as well. I do think a lot of Taurus placements do end up dealing with a lot of these lower vibrational energies of Taurus, the Taurus archetype. the wrath of other women and wives, being wanted only for beauty but not respected, may have to disguise themselves in some way or another. I'm not sure for what purpose, but just in general, being tricked by someone presenting as something they are not and finding out differently later. I do think that happens in relationships quite a bit where, you know, one person will kind of sell a dream or love bomb and stuff like that, and then later on the person finds out, oh shit, they're actually like not a good person. You know, so definitely the lower aspects of Taurus energy there, whereas the higher aspects would be more of the Hathor energy, tapping into that, which is loving, caring, nurturing, beauty, healthy expression of sexuality, music, dance, singing, royalty, and life sustaining just as a person. So beautiful energy, really. But again, the lower aspects can get a little dark and scary there too. But let's see. All right, so the first constellation we're going to talk about in Taurus is Perseus. We see Perseus up above Taurus. We did just talk about Perseus as far as it aligned with Aries. Now we're going to talk about it as it aligns with Taurus. So it impacts Taurus from 0 to 10 degrees. If anybody has Taurus at 0 degrees, 2, 6, 7, 8, 10 or 11, they may experience some of this energy. So I'm actually not going to go over, I've decided if there is a repeat, I'm not going to go over it again. Do feel free to go back to the Aries video and watch me talk through Perseus mythology and whatnot, because I'm not gonna sell this course as like individuals is all gonna come together. So it's the same information, but just applied to a different sign. So yeah, I hope that that makes sense for you. So basically anybody with Perseus with these Taurus alignments would also be aligned with Perseus energy if they had a planet that aligned with Perseus energy in addition to their Taurus energy. All right, so this is an interesting one. Camelopardalis. Whatever. It's a camel. So, or it's a camel giraffe type thing. You'll see. So if anybody has Taurus energy at 0, or I'm sorry, like, so for example, their Venus or their Mercury or their Jupiter or their Saturn or their Pluto or whatever, if they have it at 0 degrees Taurus, 6, 8, 22, or 23, they will have alignment with Camelopardalis energy. All right, so this is some interesting energy. I like it personally. Like, this is some pretty good vibes, not gonna lie. So the giraffe in Latin is what this means. Camelo is the first camel, right? And then Pardalis, I'm not sure what that means, but that's where the name comes from. So was camel leopard to the ancient Greeks? I don't know. They're just doing a bunch of stuff back then, I guess. So head of a camel and spots of a leopard. Many Greeks had never seen a giraffe in real life, so they imagined it to look something like this. So they had never seen one. So like, it probably looks like this. This is what we're gonna draw it as, which is kind of hilarious. But there's no actual distinctive mythology surrounding this constellation. So because there's no actual mythology, let's look into more of the symbolism associated here. So for giraffes, if you click on giraffe, it'll go to where this came from. But giraffes are known for vision, foresight, going beyond limitations, calmness, patient, intuitive, standing out, and gentleness. So again, if you or your clients have any of these 0, 6, 8, 22, or 23, they might have a little bit more of these energies to loop into their interpretation. So camel is adaptable, patient, endurance, perseverance through harsh conditions. They may like to travel, they may have to survive or like be built for survival. They may exhibit a lot of strength, stamina, service, and self-sufficiency. Leopard spots are seen as strength, power, courage, confidence, determination, being comfortable in one's own skin, and empowerment. So again, if they have any of those placements or those alignments, they may also have these characteristics in addition to their Taurus. Eridanus, I already talked about in the Aries one, if you want to go watch that quickly, but there's a ton of alignments in Taurus with this Eridanus, whatever. I'm sorry. One of these days I'll find the names. Probably not. So 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, 11, 12, 16, 17, 20, 21, and 24 degrees. Taurus will also be aligned with these in Eridanus. And again, the lower the number, the higher or the brighter the star is. So here, like Cursa would be, oh, and if you see like one underneath it, that just means there's 2 stars at 24 degrees here. All right. So feel free to please go back to Aries and watch the Eridanus mythology so you understand what that means. Or you can read, up to you, you know? All right, Pleiades, 7 sisters. This is a star cluster right here, if you see. So this aligns with 5 to 6 degrees of Taurus. So if somebody has any planets at 5 or 6 degrees in Taurus, this will be energy that they likely relate to. If you want to like, I do think it would be interesting to see like if somebody had more of like a Electra, you know, alignment. So basically what I'm saying is like if they had a star in the beginning or at the end, like they might be a little bit different. So if you wanted to get really into the interpretation, you could line it up super close and only read for like, you know, 2 or 3 of the sisters' stories to align with their energy, or you can group them all together or whatever you feel or whatever you think is correct for that person or yourself. But the Pleiades, so huge star cluster, very important star cluster. The Pleiades were mentioned in many cultures, not just Greek or Romans. The Pleiades are among the first stars mentioned in literature, even appearing in Chinese, well, that word, annals, of about 2350 BC. The earliest European references are somewhat later in a poem by Hesiod in about Hesiod 1000 BC and in Homer's Odyssey and Iliad. All right, so the parents of the 7 sisters were Atlas and Pleione. Atlas was a Titan who was cursed to hold up the sky, and that was their father. So, like, you'll often see that depiction of that guy, like, holding up the globe. That's Atlas, and that is the father of these 7 sisters. So why was he cursed? Why was Atlas cursed? He was one of the main leaders, if not the main leader, of the Titamancy, which was a 10-year war and rebellion against Zeus and the new gods. So they were not pleased that there were new gods, and yeah, his punishment was to hold up the sky forever. Interesting. All right, so the 7 sisters continued with their mythology. The first version of the story is that the sisters were so sad and depressed by the fate of their father Atlas that they all committed suicide and took their own lives, which to me, when I first read that, was very much giving like virgin suicides, but whatever. I don't know if you watched that movie or see, I think it's a book. But the second version is that Orion started to pursue the sisters sexually after Zeus had punished their father, Atlas, to holding up the sky, leaving the sisters more vulnerable to Orion's unwanted advances. So to keep them protected, Zeus then, to keep them protected, transformed the sisters into doves and put them into the sky to be protected by Taurus or the bull. The manifestation of Ta in Egypt, or Egyptian times, which is the equivalent to Zeus, in essence, meaning the sisters would then be protected by him. Maybe. Maybe. All right. So the third version of the story is that the seven sisters are nature nymphs. Oh wait. So also with this Orion Zeus story, there's another story that basically like Zeus is like, I'll protect you, but then he actually, did the same thing that Orion was about to do to them, but Zeus just didn't want Orion to have them. But yeah, I mean they're both trash. In some weird shape or way, I would say Orion's worse than Zeus, but hard to say. Hard to say, literally, apparently. All right, so the third version of this story is that the seven sisters are the nature nymphs, which they are in all stories, to be fair, and companions of the hunting god Artemis. So in all stories, they're nature nymphs, but in this stories, they are companions of Artemis, who is a hunting goddess. In this version of the story, fucking Orion, is still trying to do the same things mentioned in the second version, but this time Artemis as Zeus to protect them, and Zeus agrees to put them in the sky as stars. So this was at Artemis's request in this version. So again, a lot of different ways that they ended up in space, but either way, that's where they were put. Pleiades were also mentioned in the Bible, if you want more to go down that route. So those are just a few Bible verses where we see the Pleiades mentioned, if that is something that you would like to look in further on your own. All right, so the first of the seven sisters, let's go back. We have Maya. So Maya's name means May. Maya mensis, Maya's month of May. Very interesting. Okay. So she oversaw the growth of plants. She was an earth goddess and nymph, oversaw fertility, and she made babies with Zeus. And so, you know what I mean? Like Zeus is like, I'll protect you to make babies with you. What the fuck? All right. Electra had two sons with Zeus, was a nymph, took care of Aphrodite's and Aries' daughter for them. Interesting, right? Yeah, because Aphrodite and Aries, they had two sons too, but yeah, their daughter Electra took care of. So Teget, I think is how you say it. Tegeti, maybe? Tegeti. Known for being good with animals, a mountain nymph, also had children with Zeus. Very long neck, very beautiful, very lovely nymph. Alcyone, three children with Poseidon, Zeus's brother, very strong helper, leader, prefers joy, prosperity, and tranquility. Then we have Sterope. Her name means star. She's the least bright star. Made children with Aries, the god of war, weaker in comparison to the sisters because she's, the least bright. And that's not in terms of like intelligence or anything. It's just, as a star. Selino, three children with Poseidon, golden haired, the dark one, and children with Prometheus. Merope. So she's actually the kind of the outlier, Merope. So she married a mortal king, King Sisyphus. Her husband was a criminal and was punished by rolling a rock up a mountain, but each time it would almost get to the top, it would start rolling back down and he'd have to start over again. She was very, very much grief, blushing, bashful, and the only sister who didn't make babies with a god. Honestly, good for her. Love that for her. Okay. So if somebody has alignments to 5 or 6 degrees Taurus, or honestly for this, I would say like, yes, it's technically a 5 or 6 degrees, but I would say probably anywhere from like 4 to 7 degrees, you could probably say has alignments with Pleiadian energy as well. So this is very earth goddess energy, very nurturing nymph vibes, like fairy energy too, fertility, caring for others, children, very beautiful, lovely energy, loving leadership, preferring joy, prosperity, and tranquility. positively associated with springtime, beauty standards, lovers causing them pain, needing protection from abusers, and then pain, sadness, and loss. You have to remember Scorpio is the opposing energy of Taurus, so that can definitely play out within Taurus or Pleiadian energy here too. All right, next up we have Orion. So again, I hate Orion. You are going to get to know that very well. But he impacts Taurus from 21 to 36 degrees. You can see Orion is below Taurus here. Here's the sun's ecliptic path where the sun goes, this red line. So Orion is beneath Taurus and also beneath Gemini. All right, so if anybody has Taurus placements at 21 degrees, 22, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, or 35, they may have Orion alignments. And Orion actually has some real bright stars. I don't know if you saw like some ones and some twos in here. Yeah, and like Rigel, for example, Rigel 0.19, very bright star. Betelgeuse 0.5, Betelgeuse. So yeah, like there's a lot happening in Orion. Okay. So, Orion mythology, soul equivalents of Gilgamesh and Hephaestus. Orion was half god, or Gilgamesh, it goes back to Mesopotamia, whereas Hephaestus was the ugly god that Hera created on her own. So Orion was half god, half man, or referred to as 2/3 god, 1/3 man. Depends. Son of Poseidon. Poseidon's not a good person either. Like none of these gods are, good, honestly. They're pretty terrible. Pretty terrible, pretty corrupt people or entities, deities. So Orion became known as the Great Hunter. In one arm, holding a shield or a lion's mane, and in the other arm holding a bronze club or a sword and rising it above him. It depends on the story, the depictions of which he is holding. All right, he's seen fighting the Bull of Heaven, aka the constellation of Taurus, aka Zeus. Again, remember the Pleiades, he's probably like trying to get to the Pleiades through this. Not a good idea, but everyone makes their choices. So other representations of Orion have a sword on his belt and raising a bronze club, the club symbolizing the killer of animals. So one story about why he's fighting the bull is that he's chasing down the 7 sisters in the Pleiades, and then the bull is protecting them or her from Orion's unwanted sexual advances so the bull could have the sisters for himself. Great. Love that / hate that. All right, Orion mythology. Orion, honestly, pretty hot. Like, pretty hot. Super attractive demigod, and knew it. He went around just seducing every possible woman he could. He forced himself onto anybody who refused him. So trigger warning here with Orion mythology in general. If this is too much for you, that's understandable. There's a lot of fuck shit that goes on with Orion energy. Probably should have said that about Zeus as well, so my apologies. So he forced himself on anybody who refused him and didn't understand the concept of consent, acted very selfishly with little to no regard for the well-being and safety of others. Orion went on like this for a while, and nobody stopped him or put him in check. And so one day he fucked around and he found out. So Orion could walk on the waves because of his father Poseidon. He walked to the island of Chios, where he got drunk and raped Merope, the daughter of Oenopion. We're going to call him King O. So the ruler there, in vengeance, King O blinded Orion and drove him away. So now Orion finds himself the next day like hungover, blind, which I mean, like personally, good, fuck that guy. But Orion decided, so Orion doesn't have any quit in him, and now fueled by rage of being blinded, thinks to himself, how do I get out of this? How do I restore my sight? So Orion sets out on a very long journey where he ultimately finds Helios, the sun god. I remember we just talked about Helios with his son who flew too close to the sun, I believe in Aries. But anyway, sorry, just distracted myself. Okay, so Helios helps him get his sight back. The first thing Orion does when he gets his sight back is goes back to King O to get revenge on him for blinding him. It's like, where was the lesson there? Did you learn your lesson? So not only was Orion somebody who couldn't control his sexual or vengeful urges, he also was extremely boastful to the point of stupidity. The ego on this guy was truly out of control. Orion eventually made his way to Crete, where he linked up with Artemis, the hunting and moon goddess. If you remember, she was the goddess that the Pleiades, the seven sisters, were in one of the stories anyway, like taking care of her, and then she asked Artemis asked Zeus to put the sisters into the sky. So same Artemis, hunting and moon goddess. There's a lot of stories involving these two relationship, Artemis and Orion, was ultimately focused on, but ultimately Orion was focused on becoming the greatest hunter in the world. He boasted and bragged that he would kill and hunt every animal on earth to prove he was the best hunter. Everyone, like all the other guys, were like, don't do that. We don't need you to do that. Like, we know you're a good hunter. You don't have to do that. And Orion was like, no, bro, I totally have to do that. Like, think like douchebag, college frat, like just insecure, but just, oh my God, just like, bro, stop. Just literally stop. Which raised alerts to the other gods. And the gods were like, no, fuck you, Orion. You're not doing that. And they sent Scorpio, the scorpion, to kill him, which was great. Die, please. Another story of Orion's death, though, is because of Apollo. So, Apollo was Artemis's twin brother. So Orion and Artemis became very close and were likely lovers. This angered Apollo because that took away his sister's energy and attention from him and onto Orion, who Apollo did not approve of for his sister due to, Orion just being a piece of shit and mistreating her. So one day, Orion was in the water, but you couldn't make out his figure. So he was over there swimming, and Apollo and Artemis were over on the banks, and they were talking. And Apollo challenged Artemis, who was like notoriously really good with her bow, to shoot at the target to see if she could hit it. The target being the thing over in the water over there, who she had no idea was Orion. So Apollo challenged Artemis to shoot at the target to see if she could hit it, not knowing there was actually Orion in the water, killing her own friend and lover. Once Artemis accidentally killed Orion, she begged Zeus to at least put him in the sky as a constellation to be remembered. Aw, very sweet, but except for the part where it's not. So Orion astrological interpretations, if somebody has Orion alignments, they might be very bold, very audacious, determined, naturally talented, impulsive, needs to take accountability for their actions, selfish motivations for acts, overly sexual, hyper masculine, very charming, vengeful, attractive, boastful, using physical force over mental force, very reckless. Let's see, very adventurous, very fearless, very egoic, and also we have forceful here too. Yeah. Anyway, so like Orion energy can be used for good, but Orion energy within itself doesn't really know how to be used for good. So it usually goes into the more chaotic version. All right, so Auriga. Auriga. All right, so we have Auriga that is sitting right on top here of Taurus, the bull's head here. He's actually kind of like squatting a little bit. It looks kind of funny. So if somebody has Taurus placements at 22 degrees, 23 degrees, 24, 26, or 36, they have alignments with Auriga energy too. I love this energy. This is some cool energy, I think. So Auriga mythology, charioteer in Latin, shepherd energy here, cradling a goat a goat and their kids in his arms. So goats, children, or baby goats are called kids. In his right hand, he has the reins of a chariot. In his left hand, he's holding these goats. Right. Auriga is Eridanus, who is a king of Athens and son of god Hephaestus. So it's interesting that we just talked about Hephaestus a little bit, which is a different soul incarnation of Orion. So that's interesting. No mother mentioned here, but he was raised by Athena and tamed horses and harnessed them for charioteering. And he was the one that invented the 4-horse chariot. All right, so this guy. So he has a pretty big impact on Taurus and additional mythology. Feel free to click there to learn more about him. But the astrological interpretations for alignments with this energy, these people can be caretakers, they can be a little bit controlling, may be very inventive or innovative with resources, fast speed movement. So they might be into like really fast cars or fast moving vehicles or aircraft or like high speed trains or, that kind of stuff. They may have been raised by someone outside of their family, so adopted, fostered, anything like that. Loss of mother or adoption might have been a case for them, and an interest in animals or possibly as tamers or breeders of animals as well. I know there's some ethical things with breeding animals there, so take it for what it's worth. All right, so then we have the Lepus constellation, which is underneath Orion here. And so Taurus here, Sun's ecliptic path here, Orion, then under Orion we have Lepus. All right, so a fair amount, I mean, this covers a fair span of Taurus. Again, remember, to determine degrees, we're always relating things back to the sun's ecliptic path. So you might be like, well, it's not really in alignment. It is if you follow it straight up, like there, it's in Taurus. You see what I'm saying? So the end of it would be still in Taurus. So from 23 to 36. All right. So if somebody has 23 degrees Taurus, 25, 26, 28, 29, 32, 33, or 35 degrees, they may have some of this Lepus energy. So this is, the mythology here is this is a rabbit or a hare, and it was hunted down by Orion. Obviously, we just talked about Orion. This energy, there's a few different stories. One of them is this was once a bird, and he was changed into a hare by the goddess Ostera, who is the goddess of spring and dawn. Once a year, the hare still laid eggs, though, and that's where we get the origin or the mythology of the Easter Bunny. So, if you look at that story, it lost its ability to fly, but gained ability to lay eggs as a bunny, like, because you're not supposed to be able to do that, but it did. So Canis Major, the dog, chases the rabbit Lepus across the sky. The rabbit was put into the sky by Hermes to honor its speed and agility, and it's also seen as prey. So again, a lot of different mythologies here, so take what resonates. If they all resonate, great. If one does, great. So the white rabbit actually is a human trafficking symbolism. If you look at like the Playboy symbolism here, so links to trafficking and exploitation of women, being chased down by Canis Major dogs. Consider this how we call men who chase after and abuse women purely for sexual acts dogs, It's the reason we say things. It's kind of my point. Like, we all are just out here like living life, but most of the things that we know of came from somewhere. So this energy being hunted by Orion was a notorious abuser of women sexually, and going underground, things that happen underground or in secret, a lot of trafficking type stuff can happen in those scenarios too. So if we want to look at this, I hate that it says Ryan when I'm saying Orion, but whatever. All right, so Lepus, astrological interpretations may attract stalkers. So if somebody has these star alignments, they may attract stalkers, may be involved in sex trafficking willfully or unwillfully, like they may be a victim of it, or they might end up like recruiting other people. Personally, right now, like I literally work with sex trafficking victims, and yeah, it's crazy. Like some of the girls will end up being like recruiters for their pimps to try to get other girls. It's a whole fucking thing, and like most people don't really think about it, but it actually does have astronomical and astrological bases to it too. So anyway, back to Lepus mythology or astrological interpretations. If you have alignments here, loss of one ability but might be able to gain another. Adaptability, being hunted or preyed upon. For sexuality, you might actually have like really strong fertility. People might be attracted for the wrong reasons, for purely sexual motives, or may feel like running away from something or someone, or may have to at some point in life. So not the best to have alignments with, honestly. I mean, if you do go back to, let me go back here. You know, like these people might be quick, like they might think quickly if they have like Mercury here, like speed and agility or something like that, you know, but otherwise this is very much kind of like victim-y energy or being chased by others for the wrong reasons. All right. Next up, we have Columba. So only 4 alignments here. So if somebody has a planet at 28 degrees Taurus, 31 degrees, 35 degrees, or 36 degrees, it will have alignments with Columba down here. So Columba is the dove in Latin. Biblically, this was seen as Noah's dove that searched for dry land after the flood. So if you're familiar with Noah's Ark story, yeah, all the animals had to go into the ark, and this is the dove that searched for land after the flood. The symbolism here is a dove with an olive branch. So dove symbolism in itself is peace, freedom, love, spirituality, and renewal. Olive branch symbolism is peace, hope, and friendship. All right, so this source says, Columba represents Noah's dove. Petrus Plancius created the constellation from the stars located behind Argo Navis, the constellation that represented the Argonaut ship and was later split into several smaller constellations. It was later renamed Argo Navis to Noah's Ark on a celestial globe of 1613. So there's a lot of interesting, like, biblical things that are involved in space as well. So it's not, you know, things go deeper and further than a lot of people consider them to. But essentially, again, all of religion, mythology, spirituality, most of it's alien or interdimensional being history. The sooner you see it like that, the easier shit's gonna be, but whatever. So Columba astrological interpretations. So people that have star alignments to Columba, they might be very loving, very peaceful, very good friends, helpful. They so searching for dry land, it could be seen as maybe avoiding waters or emotions, or like maybe, you know, going through some really tough storms or some like bad weather, some bad emotional things. But like at the end of it, you know, landing on their feet, which is very Taurus energy, very hopeful energy and freedom seeking as well with these alignments here. And that, my friends, is Taurus. So next up, we will talk about Gemini and then go from there. All right. Cool, 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 cool.